Okay, so our next storyteller is our dear co-host, Robin Bayley. And when I asked Robin, out of all the times and places that he could have gone back to, those magical moments throughout history, the times of struggle, the times of enlightenment, he chose, ladies and gentlemen, to go back to when he was 5 years old at school. And all he wanted was not to pee himself. Ladies and gentlemen, Robin Bayley.
Thank you very much. So, my story is about when your moment in the spotlight goes to your head. It's a couple of years ago, and I'm really struggling to make ends meet as an English language teacher. One September afternoon, I received a phone call. A very plummy voice tells me that her Russian boss requires an English conversational teacher. The next day, I made my way to an address in Chelsea. It's not one house, it's two houses put together. In front of this house, there is a Bentley with blacked out windows. In front of the Bentley, there's a Porsche. In front of the Porsche, there are two Range Rovers. In front of the Range Rovers is a Land Cruiser. I walk in between the cars and get to the front door. In front of the door is a man mounted, and he has an earpiece and a cuff mic. And I go up to him and I start talking, and why I'm there, and he just goes, up, that, okay. There's a buzz, and an enormous door about that thick swings open, and then slams shut behind me. I walk up the stairs and find myself in a kitchen. There's no one there. And then I hear some footsteps, and I turn around, and there's a man walking towards me. He's tall and gaunt. He has a bald head and a very well sculpted beard, and bright, piercing blue eyes. And he's got his hand outstretched, and he has a vice-like grip. He leads me to the study. It's not like any study I've ever been in. It's an atrium. It's 2 stories up, and right in the middle is a leather-top desk. He sits down and he lays his elbows on top of the desk, and he fixes me with his laser-like eyes, and he says, "So, Putin, what do you think about Putin?" I decided to kind of fudge it. I said, we, the British people, we don't like him very much, but we think he's really intelligent. And he said, no, he's not intelligent, he's really stupid. And he began to tell me about why President Putin was stupid. But the way that he was talking about him wasn't as if we would talk about Cameron or May or whoever, like a distant icon almost. He was talking about experiences where he was by Putin's side. He was telling me about, he was there when Putin met Clinton. He was there when Putin met Tony Blair. and about how Tony Blair really disappointed him because he gave him the cold shoulder. He was telling me all of these stories, and I was thinking, crikey, who is this person? I just knew I was talking to a Russian businessman. I rush home, and I Google, and I discover the man I'm talking to. His name? Sergei Pugachev, aka the Kremlin's banker. I saw a press report which claimed that his fortune was estimated at $15.2 billion. And my first thought was, shit, I'm charging him 20 quid an hour. The next day I get in and we're talking, and we're talking about politics, and France came up. And I said, oh, do you think Sarkozy, do you think he's going to run in the next presidential election? He goes, his wife doesn't want. You know Sarkozy? Of course. He's my neighbour. He lives in Chelsea. He lives in Chelsea? Of course. So does he need an English teacher? He said, no. He doesn't like English. And then he tells me about his nuclear boat. A what? Nuclear boat. He looks at me like, why am I crazy? I've never heard of a nuclear boat. I said, so really, describe this nuclear boat. He said, it has a nuclear, he's trying to think of the word, a reactor. He has you've got a boat with a nuclear reactor. Yes. What's it for? Electricity. All right, just so how many homes could it power? He said, about 1 million. I said, we need it here. We need it here. You live in Chelsea, bring it here. Isn't it wrong that the Chinese want it back? The Russians, I want it. And we're talking about travel. And he tells me about various stories about traveling by plane, and then he pauses and he says, that was 1991. That was the last time I traveled in a commercial airline. You've got a private jet? And he looked at me and went, one private jet? Like I insulted the man. He had a fleet of private jets. The end of that meeting lasted 4 hours. And to be honest, I was thinking, 80 quid. I said, Sergey, just a little bit. Could we just increase what I'm learning just a little bit? He said, sure. How much? I hadn't thought that far, but I thought of a figure and then I trebled it. Okay. He went to his satchel and he got a handful of £50 notes and handed them to me and said, I'll see you tomorrow. So the next day I came back, and thank God this became the new normal. From having no money whatsoever, all of a sudden having shitloads. It's brilliant. And every single day I'm getting these great stories about history, things about, well, I won't go into all the details, but it was wonderful stuff. Scandalous. And he started to tell me, he started to ask me slightly strange questions. He wanted me to prepare him for certain situations, and I couldn't quite get it. And then after a few weeks, I arrived, and he was really, really high. He was really excited. And he threw down a copy of the Financial Times, and it was a lead story, an interview with Sergei. And he was giving Putin both barrels. I said, Sergei, are you really sure this is a good idea? said, yes. And this was when I made my mistake. I was in the spotlight. He was in the spotlight. I was loving the fact that I was in this situation. I was loving the money. So I said, Sergey, do you want an interview in Time magazine? Of course. I'll fix it. And I have to be honest, there's my pride. It's not, I fixed an interview in Time magazine. I did, I sorted it out. He went round the world. The day after it appeared in the press, the ramifications very soon became apparent. The Secret Service in Russia had been into his Moscow office and they trashed it. He had appeared on the Interpol watch list. From my point of view, the other thing, Putin tied him up in knots. All his money was frozen. All my money was frozen because he was fighting Putin in court and therefore couldn't have English lessons. The party had come to an end. Shortly after this, his security detail found a tracking device under his family's car. He disappeared. 2 years later, he's still in hiding. He can't come home, he can't come back to this country. He's on the run. I no longer get to go to his house of a morning and have breakfast cooked by his French chef and get stuffed, my hand stuffed with £50 notes. And it all goes back to the spotlight. I was in the spotlight. He was wanting to be in the spotlight because he wanted to bring down his friend, his ex-friend I should say. He wanted to persecute his friend. I remained in the spotlight. I wanted to keep in the spotlight because I wanted the money to keep on coming and because my pride was being puffed up. Now, I'm not going to stand here and say that it's wrong to want to be in the spotlight. I'm standing in front of you telling you something. But if you do have the opportunity to be in the spotlight, or if you're in the spotlight and you have the opportunity to remain in the spotlight, I would recommend you ask yourself one question. What's my motivation? Thank you very much.